Hi guys, welcome back for another video. I think I will title this one Relational Care Basics or Relational Essentials #1. This video has been a long time coming, lots of clients asking for this, and I found myself explaining it so often, and it's been really helpful that I thought I'm going to throw a video together, put it out there, let people kind of begin to start understanding this concept. This is a relational essential, and this has to do with buckets. Let's talk about buckets. First, I'm going to explain what buckets are and kind of how they relate. And then I will talk a little bit about how this shows up in relating with other people. And this concept kind of goes really deep and really wide, but we have to start somewhere. So let's start with buckets. I have a bucket right here. And inside my bucket, I keep everything. This includes my emotions, my thoughts, my desires, my plans, goals, my experiences, so my memories, all of the things that are going on inside of here, I basically keep them in my bucket. That's where they live. And all of the things in my bucket are mine. They belong to me. And they're accessible to me. You also have a bucket. So this one over here is yours. And in your bucket, you keep all the things that are important to you. Your thoughts, your emotions, your dreams, your goals, your reactions to things, your experiences, your memories, all of those things that make up who you are, where you've been, where you hope to go, how you're feeling in the moment, all of those things are in your bucket. They're yours. You own them and you're responsible for them, right? So one of the things on our bucket we want to think about having is that there's you don't see it on this one, but a filter, say like a mesh screen of some sort. And what that does is it helps me keep things out of my bucket that don't belong there. But it also helps me when life jostles me around a bit. It helps keep the things that are me and part of mine in my bucket so they don't get, spill out when I get jostled around by life's lumps and bumps. Same thing, your bucket also has a screen on top, a lid, if you will, but it allows things in, but it also helps keep things safe and secure inside your bucket where they live and where they belong. So each of us have these buckets. Now, the important thing about buckets and how this relates to interpersonal boundaries is that whatever is in my bucket is mine. It belongs to me. If I own it simply by its location, it's mine. It's in here. That means it's mine. I own this, so I own what's in it. I am therefore responsible for it. So whatever's in here is my responsibility. It belongs to me. I own it. Same thing for your bucket. Whatever is in your bucket belongs to you. And because it belongs to you, you own it. And ownership means it's yours, right? And you're also responsible for it because it belongs to you. It's yours. Those are the buckets. Now let's talk about how this applies relationally. In healthy relating between two people, we have an experience where, let's imagine a coffee shop. I sit down at a chair, you come in, and you're going to sit down in your chair. But between us is a table. And I'm going to kind of like reach over here and grab the table and drag it over just for emphasis so I can kind of demonstrate this table is between us. that table is the relating space. It's the relational space between us, me and you relating to each other. We are always going to be relating across this relational space. The reason that this space exists is because we are separate people. We are individuals. And God made us this way, right? Part of our design is that we are very individual. We are unique. And so when I sit across from someone, there's some separation between us, right? Because we're two separate people. We are, in reality, separate people. We are individual people in actual physical reality, right? And that's important. So, we want to recognize this reality by keeping the table between us. There is a physical reality of relational space that sits between us simply because we are different individual people. We are not the same. Okay? And that's good. Now, one of the things that happens for us is that whenever another part of our design, I should say, another part of being human, part of our how we're made, is that when we relate to someone, even though we've got the table across us, when we relate to each other, we do that in a way that does some things neurologically. And in one of my neurobiology essentials videos, I talk a little bit about some of those. Like we have mirror neurons, for example, so that if I see someone doing something, I can experience an actual neurological response that mimics what I'm watching. For example, I could be in a parking lot, right, walking along and see someone in a little bit of a distance, maybe not too far away, but who smiles at me. And I will have a neurological response to that. I will feel that inside, right? I'm not responding to the smile necessarily because I've thought about it, interpreted it, and went, oh, they're smiling because they're a nice person. They must be having a nice day and they're just happy to be here, right? No, I feel it personally. I have a response inside that's like, they're smiling at me. I feel that smile and I might catch myself smiling also, even though I have no idea why this person is smiling. Maybe they actually have earbuds in and they're talking to someone and they happen to catch my eye and I don't realize they're listening to something that's making them smile. It doesn't matter because when I see that smile, I feel it and I smile. I have a response neurologically. So we are going to have some experiences as people whenever we relate to other people. And some of that is just biology. It's just kind of how we're made. We pick up on other people's moods. We just relate that way. That's connection, right? We're relational beings. This is how we're made. So that is going to happen. But that reality is actually what we usually are getting confused about whenever we relate to someone in order to keep our separation, right? So let's just kind of recognize that reality is that we're separate individuals, but there are some things going on that will happen for me when I'm in the presence of someone else. I'm going to respond to that because we're relational beings. That's also just how I'm made. But I am also a separate individual. I am in reality separate. Okay. So back to our relating space. We're in the coffee shop. I'm sitting here, someone's sitting over there, and we have the coffee table between us, this big table between us. In healthy relating, this is what it should look like. I come in, I have my bucket, and I sit down, and I'm going to show and tell you, the person I'm relating to, some things that are in my bucket. So I might reach in my bucket and say, I remembered something. I was feeling really upset yesterday because I saw something. I was trying to do something. I remembered something from a long time ago. Made me angry. And then I got distracted and I forgot all about it. And then I went outside and took a nap. And yes, you should nap outside if you haven't. Okay, so I have showed and told lots of different things, thoughts, feelings, my emotions, my plans, my experiences, what I did, what I thought about it, how I felt about it, right? I showed those things and I told you about those things. In healthy relating, what should happen next with all of this stuff from my bucket is that it stays there. And now it's your turn. And we back and forth share by showing and telling about the things that are in my bucket. When I do this, when I'm showing and telling, the person across the table has the opportunity to learn about me, to learn about my experiences, to learn about my thoughts and feelings. And maybe they can even make some of their own judgments, or, you know, they might decide that, oh, wow, I'm a really funny person because I take naps outside, right? That might be something that person decides about me. But they get that from learning about me by me sharing and telling things. And then I put stuff back in my bucket, and in a healthy relating environment, there will be an exchange. So now I'm done sharing, and now it's your turn. And so the table sort of goes, the baton, if you will. I'm handing the baton over to you. Now it's your turn. What are you going to do? Well, in healthy relating, your bucket gets picked up, and now you're going to show and tell some things to me about your thoughts, your emotions, your whatever's going on for you, your experiences, your thoughts, what about the future, your plans, your dreams, all of it. And while you're sharing, I get to sit and watch you share and tell about what's in your bucket. I get to learn about you. I might get to know you and, decide you're a really calm person who doesn't sleep outside or nap outside, right? This is healthy relating. There is an exchange, but the exchange is not things coming out of my bucket. The exchange is the taking turns showing and telling, sharing, showing and telling what's in my bucket so that you can learn about me. You get to know me, and that is how we build connection. When we relate in this healthy way, back and forth, it's reciprocal, right? We take turns. There's equal time, equal attention in these different ways. One, me being able and willing to share and tell things that are in my bucket so that you can get to know me. And you sharing and telling, me listening and paying attention and focusing and learning about you. That's how connection is made. This is how relationships are formed when it's a healthy dynamic. So, and just remember, I show and tell stuff and I put it back in my bucket. Why? Because it's mine. This is where it belongs. It's mine. It belongs to me. I'm responsible for it. I own it. It's mine. Right? Okay, so I know this sounds amazing. Like, what a perfect coffee date, right? I sit down, I share and tell, I trust this person, I can tell them anything I say, they listen, and then I'm done, I take a breath, and then they go, here's what's been going on with me, and I listen, I'm interested, I learn about them, and then I feel connected to them, we relate to each other in this healthy way, and then we say goodbye, see you next time, whatever, we go on, we go about our day. But we all know that this is not what relating to other people typically feels like. Relating to other people typically feels messy. It can feel confusing, and it can be super annoying and irritating to our system, right? Like we just get, like, it's frustrating, okay? Here's why. In unhealthy relating, what typically happens is one of a couple of things. One, the person who is sharing takes their stuff, and rather than sharing and telling and putting it back in their bucket, they share and they tell and they share and they tell, and then they share and tell, and they have all of this stuff. And did you see this? Did you know? And this one, did I tell you about this one? Right? Now, so far, there's nothing wrong with what I'm doing. I'm sharing and telling, even though it's a lot of stuff, right? But when someone comes in and they're pulling all of this stuff out of their bucket and they're sharing and telling everything, we start to get a sense that maybe this is not going to be reciprocal. This is going to take a while. What's going to happen with what are they going to do with all of this stuff that they're pulling out in their bucket? Because that's a lot of stuff. I'm not even sure it's going to fit back in there if they were to put it back, right? But mostly we know that they don't put it back. What happens is they start doing things like, well, here, right? And they start laying it out on the table, and suddenly you can't see, but I'm spreading all of the things from my bucket all over the table, and I'm this and this and this, and I'm dumping my bucket out everywhere, right? Things are going all over the place, and I'm overwhelmed, and I'm sharing and telling all of this stuff. Now we switch the tables and the person on the other side. In healthy relating, I might do this and then be like, hold it, give me a second. I want to hear what's going on with you. Let me pick all this stuff up, and I might put it back in my bucket, and then I might get to a healthy relating spot. But usually that's not what happens, right? Usually what happens is one person comes in and dumps all their things out. Whenever we dump our stuff out and we take it out of the bucket, a lot of times what follows is that I'm expecting and wanting someone to do something about these things, someone else to be responsible, to take ownership. So what do? I reach across and I put it in someone else's bucket. Yours, you happen to be sitting across the table from me. So I start trying to put it in your bucket. That's going to sound like, you made me so angry. You messed up everything for me. If you hadn't said or done or whatever, this would not be true for me. It's your fault. These belong in your bucket. You're responsible for it. That's what often happens when someone shares and tells and is not taking ownership of their things. They're not putting it back in their own bucket. This is a boundary violation. This is an interpersonal boundary violation. This person doesn't understand that those things belong to them. They have not taken responsibility for it, right? So, what do we do in that situation? I'm on the other side of the table and people are, maybe it's my child. Maybe it's my spouse. Maybe it's my best friend. Maybe it's someone at care group, or, wherever you might, at the gym or wherever you go. You're going to get people who just naturally kind of are expecting you to take over for them, to take ownership of the things that they are sharing and telling. What do we do about that? What happens next, right? What about me sitting over here with this person dumping their stuff all over the table? The very first thing that we want to do is to say, when things get overwhelming, when we're in a relational dynamic and things get overwhelming and it feels like a lot and it's kind of overwhelming, it's much, it's a lot of much, right? When all this is get all over the table. The first thing I want to do is simply pause and say, whose bucket did this stuff come from? So as I sit and interact with someone and relate to someone, and maybe they're much, maybe I'm starting to feel like I'm supposed to do something about these things, right? Whether from their words or my own response, my own bucket is churning a little bit. I'm experiencing some emotions and some confusion, like, am I supposed to do something here, right? Before we decide that, before we take any actions, we want to ask, whose bucket did this come from? Is it an emotion? Whose emotion is it? Is it a thought? Is it a plan? Is it an understanding? Is it a memory, an experience? Whose bucket did it come from? Was I sharing and telling these things, or was someone else? And if it came from someone else's bucket, then I need to be hands off and I need to wait because it's not my turn, right? They are sharing and telling. And the second dynamic that happens with this is that me on the other side reciprocating. If I start picking stuff up off the table that they have shared and going, oh, well, I can call them. That's really frustrating. I wonder what the best thing to do for that would be. I'm gonna let me ask someone. Let me research. Right? I can do that, and I might start picking up the things that they have shared and tell and trying to put them in my bucket, which is the same as if I reached across the table and pulled stuff out of their bucket and said, "That's I'm gonna take care of that for you. I'm gonna take responsibility for your emotions, for your thoughts, for your plans." For whatever's going on with you, right? So that's the second side, right? So you see there's this dynamic. You can see, well, it gets messy really quickly because there's stuff all over the table. Somebody's got a lot of energy, a lot of what we might call drama. So there's really drama is just lots of things in buckets being dumped out on the table. It's perfectly fine to dump out your stuff on the table. You're allowed to share and tell in that way. That might be your style. You might just have a moment and you just need to share and get it off your chest. That's all great. The crux that happens, the important part in healthy relating is what happens next. Do I, as the sharer, take my stuff, put it back in my bucket, and then reciprocate and give you a chance to share and talk and be known? Or do you, as the hearer or sayer, start taking responsibility and grabbing stuff on my bucket and trying to take responsibility for it, taking it from me? Or do I expect you to do that? Do I start putting it in your bucket and saying, hey, could you call them? Don't you know how to fix this? Well, you have experience. You've been through this before, right? So you can see how it gets really messy. So how do we do that? One, we ask, whose bucket did this come from? If it did not come from my bucket, it doesn't belong to me. If it doesn't belong to me, I am not responsible for it. I do not have ownership for it. And if I try to take ownership for something that did not come from my bucket, I am taking. And I am reaching across an interpersonal boundary, that separation that we have as individual people. I am officially reaching across it and taking things out of your bucket. I am breaking a boundary when I do that, when I take responsibility for things that aren't mine. Same thing happens when someone tries to place responsibility into my bucket for things that are not mine. Now, I can remember the filter on the top of my bucket. Those are our boundaries, right? That's how I can respond when people might try to put stuff in my bucket, but I don't have an open bucket that anyone can just come dump stuff into, right? I have a fine mesh topper that is really good at sorting out what belongs in here and what does not, what's mine and what is not. And that is something that we'll have to talk about in a different lesson because we're gonna run out of time. Told you I could talk about this all day. But so in that relating, we want to keep our filter on our bucket, but we want to be willing and able to share and be vulnerable with people and talk about what's going on for me, so that you can get to know me, so that I can be known by you, and we can foster connection that way. That's how connection gets fostered, right? I have to be willing to share and talk and take a moment, right? But when I'm done, I'm going to put it back in my bucket and I'm going to kind of say, what's been going on for you? Or that's kind of where I am today, right? I'm not expecting someone else to pick up the stuff and take responsibility for it. I just took responsibility. I put it right back where it belongs in my bucket, right? And then as I healthy relate across this distance, there's distance between us, separation. As I healthily relate to you, I'm able to share, but I'm also able to give you a chance to share so that I can get to know you. I can feel connected to you and you can feel connected to me because we get to know each other this way. So I can watch you share and tell the things. And maybe you're dumping your bucket all over the table because you've just got a lot of stuff and it's all coming out and you're dumping, dumping, dumping. That's okay. That's okay. Just because there's things on the table doesn't mean they get in here, right? I've got a filter. I know. That's not mine. That's theirs. They're sharing and telling something. I can get to know them. What does this tell me about them? What does it tell me about their experience and what's going on for them right now? Right? And then I sit and I leave it. And it's up to them if they're going to pick up their stuff, what they're going to do with their stuff. But most people will pick up their stuff and put it back in their bucket if I don't interrupt and if I don't try to grab it off the table and take responsibility for it myself, right? All of that. So healthy relating has a couple of components that we have to remember. One is that we are separate individual people. And we each have our own buckets, and everything that is in my bucket, no matter how loudly and profusely I share and tell it, never leaves my bucket. It is always still in my bucket. It belongs to me. It is mine. God made me this way. He put those things in there or is doing something with the things in there. However you might want to look at that, they're mine, right? Two, there is a relating space between us. We are separate individual people in reality. It is in reality impossible for me to cause or create any particular emotion that you experience. Hear that. It's impossible for me to be responsible to create things in your bucket. I can't create things in your bucket. That's impossible. That doesn't diminish the fact you're having those experiences, that you're having emotions, that you're having responses. Things are happening for you in your bucket. That doesn't diminish that. And maybe those responses are coming up because, or not because of, but in response to something I have said or done. But that doesn't mean I created that feeling in your bucket, or I created that thought, or, you know, that emotion for you. That's impossible. I can't do that, right? We need, in healthy relating, good separation. This is what Cloud and Townsend wrote 7 books over. Boundaries, right? Separation. They use the analogy of like somebody else's garden or their yard with a fence around it and a gate. You get to open the gate, allow people to come in, whoever you want, but the gate stays closed. It's not open. Filter stays on. It's not an open bucket, right? So in our yard, you don't walk into someone else's yard and start pulling their weeds. So you don't reach across the relating space and start taking stuff out of my bucket, or even reach onto the table and pick things up that belong to me that I was sharing and telling, right? So boundaries work both ways, but ultimately, step 1 is to understand what a healthy relational interaction will look like. And that looks like we are separate, the table stays between us. We take turns sharing and telling the things that are going on for us that are in my bucket, and we retain ownership and responsibility for those things. And when that is happening, I get to learn about you, you get to learn about me. Each of us is known and seen, and that is where connection happens. Okay, guys, I'm going to call it quits for this boundaries bucket metaphor video, but this is Relational Basics 1, healthy relating. Your job going forward is to simply become aware, keep the table between you and other people. Any person that feels like they stir so much stuff up in you, or it's really hard for you to be around them, that's because the table has been gone or removed, right? Get the table between you. Drag the, I use this in session. I'll say, get the table, get a hold of it. We're going to make that loud screeching noise, dragging the table across the floor and dragging it in between us. It is super important. We must have it. It is reality that we're separate people. We need some separation. When I have that separation, that space, some distance, It gives me a chance to kind of process what's happening for me in my own bucket when you share and tell in a certain way, or certain things, or in a certain volume, or a certain pace, whatever's happening over there on your side of the table with some distance, I'm able to tolerate a little better. I can breathe a little better because I have good clarity that that's your stuff. That's not mine. I'm over here. I can pay attention to, like, okay, what's happening for me? Okay, this is churning up some stuff for me. Wow, I feel, well, I'm getting kind of anxious just hearing about their stress, right? And then over here, I can deal with that. I can take a breath. I can recognize, okay, this is what's going on for me, but how am I going to respond when it's my turn, right? After I notice and hear and learn about them. How can I do that? What's going to happen next? And then now in a relational capacity, I can make decisions from from my values, because those are in my bucket too, right? What I value and how I make decisions. It's in here. So when I have some separation and some clarity, suddenly I can go, okay, how do I want to handle this? What do I want to say? Given that I'm noticing feeling a certain way or whatever. And then I can respond to people with clarity and confidence because I've got clarity and confidence that's provided to me by the separation of this relating space, recognizing it and keeping myself on my side of the table, but also keeping them over there, arm's length away, even if it's your spouse, even if it's your child, right? We need to understand that we need a little separation in order to relate healthily from a calm, confident space. That's how we do it. Okay, go do it. Try it out. I hope this helps.